Roxo Media House.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Purple Theory podcast. My name is Grant McGalliard. I have alongside with me my co-host, my friend Parker Fleming. Parker, it's great to see you. Let's get right into it. How was your Christmas, man? Good time?
It was good. First Christmas, the wife and I were kind of alone intentionally, which was nice. We got to do our little family Christmas and really enjoyed it. It snowed and was super cold right before. So warmed up a little bit on Christmas. We got all of the white Christmas without any of the hazardous weather, which was nice. How was things down in Bay City?
They were great. Yeah, it was cold enough to make it feel like Christmas. It was like 40 degrees, I think, on Christmas. So, everybody bundled up and went outside and sat on the porch out at the ranch. And it was a good time, man. Sang Silent Night, did everything like that. My family hates Merry Christmas from the Family by Robert Earl Keen. I think I texted you this. And it really kind of put a damper.
Is it because it's too perceptive and too reflective of reality?
No,
or
it's just they really hate Robert Earl Keen. And I tried to play it in the Montgomery Gentry version, and they didn't. It didn't make it any better. I don't know. But kind of put a damper on my Yuletide cheer. But besides that, no, it was a great time. Hope everybody listening had a great Christmas as well. Parker, have there been bowl games, before we get to the Michigan schedule recap, which is what this podcast is, have there been bowl games that have caught your eye so far? I can think of one, but if you have any, please let me know.
There have been so many. I mean, we're recording right now as Kansas is just taking this to overtime, or Arkansas is trying to kick a field goal here at the end. But that one has been very, very fun. I'm trying to think, since we last recorded on Wednesday, a week ago.
That is correct.
And so since then, there have been so many good ones. East Carolina and Coastal was very fun until East Carolina pulled away. Grant, I don't know that we've talked about Baylor and Air Force.
Oh, that's what I was going to bring up.
Which is maybe one of the most satisfying bowl games of all time, because we said it before. We said it was going to suck. It was going to be super cold, playing in TCU Stadium. And buddy, Baylor was not ready for the smoke. They did not want the Falcons smoke at all. The only 2 touchdowns they scored were 2-minute drills against the Service Academy, which is, it was not great. It was not great.
Baylor has more losses in TCU Stadium than TCU does this year, which is very fun. Air Force threw 7 times. Am I reading that correctly? For 103 yards, which is some efficiency. Out the wazoo. I really get a big kick out of Baylor having to brave the wins in Fort Worth at Amon G. Carter, getting their asses ran over by a Service Academy triple option team. It really warmed my heart, more than watching Christmas Vacation, more than watching A Christmas Story. Just really kind of put me in the spirit of the season. So really the greatest gift, I would say.
It really did. I mean, my wife had to be clued in pretty quickly because I was sitting on the couch giggling from drive one. Like drive one, I was like, man, Baylor's having a real bad time tonight. And so I had to fill her in while I was just like, sitting there laughing about this awful performance. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemies, but I would wish it on Baylor. So.
But I would wish it on the Baylor Bears. Yeah. We should mention off the top the other Big 12 game. Oklahoma State lost to Wisconsin 24-17 in the Guaranteed Rate Bowl, and Mike Gundy said weird things. We don't need to go into the weird things. I will say that the closest Oklahoma State friend that I have, I believe him when I say they are tired of that stuff and they want it to go away.
It was funny when I think I tweeted this today. It was funny when it was like charming, right? When it was like, I'm a man, I'm 40. It was clever. Yeah. It was alternative, and they were winning 10 games. It is not as fun when he's clearly annoyed about just a frankly shitty game and a shitty situation with the roster right now. And the fact that he's going to have to do something he doesn't like to do, which is go to the transfer portal to try and flip this roster over because they are in a very bad spot here. And he's angry about that. And so I can separate that out totally and say, one, dumbass question, stupid question, absolutely deserves hey man, we're not going to talk about this right now. Like, what are
Yeah.
you doing? Right? Does not deserve, hey, I'm going to threaten your livelihood, effectively fire you, and call you an ass on a national stage. Just very dumb, just complete dumb behavior. So whether Gundy was justified in being angry with the question is not anything close to whether Gundy was justified in calling a guy an ass and threatening to take his access away because Gundy was a little red ass after losing an annoying bowl game.
It's immaterial. It reminds me, I think I've brought this up, but you know, Step Brothers, when they wear the tuxedos to the interview, and then I think Will Ferrell cuts a fart in the middle of it, and the interviewer goes, all right, now the tuxedos kind of seem effed up. It's like, that's what it's like. Like everything's very fun, and oh yeah, you're a character. And then you like, if you keep losing, it's like, now it seems kind of messed up. And that's Gundy's found himself. He is dangerously close to treading into Gary Patterson's zone.
I think that's fair. It's hard because it's like those are different but similar situations.
They are.
And so I don't want to be
same.
just like, oh my gosh, Arkansas. Oh, I thought he was going to break away for a touchdown there at the end, but we're going to overtime. It's kind of
Double
a situation
overtime?
where like, no, single overtime. Arkansas was driving with 41
Oh,
seconds.
they were? Okay.
All
right.
Yeah.
Sorry. Parker is narrating this game to me for the record.
I
don't
tried
have
to
a TV
screen share with Grant, but those cops at YouTube TV won't let me. Just annoying. Anyway, Gundy, it's funny when you're winning and when it's like benign. With the stuff that's happened with him over the last couple of years, like clearly, dude, you're not tapping into the vein of what people want out of you, and you're coming across as an angry old person. And maybe he needs to reflect on that and figure out what's going on. But also, we can make fun of the media and be like, that was a dumb question.
Oh,
that's great.
Totally dumb question. No, it's a completely dumb question. There's no doubt about that. But you can be an ass and win, or you can be nice and lose, but you can't be an ass and lose. And you can't lose the guaranteed rate bowl, which I think is the spiritual successor to the Cheez-It Bowl. I think it played in Chase Field. So
yes,
you know.
it got bought out. But it is the one true Cheez-It Bowl.
The one true.
I miss the Outback Bowl.
The one
it was Outback and then Russell Athletic, and now it's the Cheez-It Bowl. It'll never be the Cheez-It Bowl for me. It is the Outback Bowl.
I think it was Russell Athletic, then Outback, because Brian Nanny did the Blooming Onion at the Outback like a couple years ago. But I remember it was Russell.
I feel like that was like 2016 at this point. Maybe I'm just getting old and all my years are running together.
It was, but I swear Russell Athletic was before Outback.
Interesting.
But because Russell Athletic hasn't been a brand since 2008 when they sponsored Georgia Tech.
Oh, wow.
Well, I mean, I'm exaggerating, but you know what? Let's look this up. This is
the people need
for all of our listeners. The people need to know this is important.
I can vamp while Grant looks this up. And it's a Big 12 bowl tie-in.
Outback Bowl.
And it's Outback Bowl is. Go ahead.
Really, a Quest Bowl is interesting. Okay.
I think that's ReliaQuest.
ReliaQuest. Sorry. Yeah, no, that's fair. It was the Outback Steakhouse Bowl from 1996 to 2002. So the Cheez-It Bowl is a different thing now. Okay.
Only until 2002?
No, sorry, 2022. The Cheez-It Bowl is now a different thing. There's a whole. Okay, it was formerly. You're right. The Cheez-It Bowl was the Russell Athletic Bowl from 2012 to 2016. It was in the Camping World Bowl. And then it was the Cheez-It Bowl, but it moved around a bunch. There's also the Micron PC Bowl, the Champ Sports Bowl, the Blockbuster Bowl, the Mazda Bowl, the Florida Tourism Bowl. Very interesting. Anyway, none of this is important, but
I would never call it the Florida Tourism Bowl. I would call it the Come to Florida Bowl.
Just call it the Disney World Bowl. It's Come to Florida. This is all we have.
I'm pretty sure you would have to pay. I'm pretty sure whoever runs that bowl would have to pay Disney to be able, like normally bowl sponsors pay to have their naming rights, but with Disney it would be the opposite. It's like they would make you pay to have them associated with the football game.
Please let us pay you $1 million to use your name so we don't sound like idiot. Well, Disney also owns ESPN. That is an incestuous relationship. There is one other bowl game I do want to talk about, Parker.
Please.
New Mexico State beat Bowling Green 24-19 in the Quick Lane Bowl. Jerry Kill.
The fighting Jerry Kills.
Coach? I mean, what the hell, man?
he wasn't bad at Minnesota before he had some
No,
health
he
issues
wasn't.
and then kind of went crazy with the. I shouldn't say went crazy. The whole Tracy Claeys thing was weird at Minnesota,
Yes.
and like him and PJ Fleck drama, and Jerry Kill was involved in some way. It's gross to me, but he got out. That's great, and he got his health together.
Yep.
And took a bunch of guys. I'm trying to remember like everybody who went over. Monty Watkins like transferred over.
Yeah.
I think Chad Glasgow is over there. Garrett Altman, who is an offensive line guy, is over there
Tim
with
Beck
him from TCU.
is over there.
Tim Beck from Penn State, or from Pitt State, not from NC State. The other Tim Beck, who was an offensive analyst, is over there. So he took a bunch of guys that clearly weren't going to have a job at TCU and kind of said, hey, if we just do things right, I think we could build a program here. They're about to join the CUSA. They're in a good spot, man. They're in a good spot.
The Purple Theory podcast has no ill will to Kill. And
I think
very
I've said
impressed.
multiple times on the podcast that Northwestern New Mexico is underrated.
What city are they in? I forget.
I thought they're okay. So I'm going to mess up. New Mexico.
No, I didn't mean to put you on
and
the spot.
New Mexico State are in Las Cruces and Albuquerque. I thought New Mexico State was in Albuquerque.
Okay, I think you might be right. I need to do the Sporkle quiz where you name all the college towns again. But yeah, I've never been to Northwest Mexico.
No, they're in Las Cruces. So
They're in Las
New
Cruces.
Mexico is in Albuquerque, I think, right there. So maybe I have that wrong. This map is very confusing. Anyway, Albuquerque. Shout out to the Little Bear Coffee Shop in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Shout out to Breaking Bad. Parker, maybe you don't know this. Las Cruces is Spanish for the crosses.
Oh,
How about that?
agree
Parker,
to disagree.
Is it not?
No,
Sorry.
that was just a dumb. I wasn't
sorry.
gonna actually say this stupid Anchorman joke where he talks about what San Diego is for, but I was
San
like
Diego
kind of vaguely reference it. This podcast is great. We've been going for like 30 minutes at this point.
No, we've been going for 10. We've only been recording for 10.
This is the most bantery banter
I know.
to begin a podcast. And Grant, I think that's good in our second to last game preview of the season. Here I did there. See what I did there? Second to last game preview of the season. I'm happy to be loose. I'm happy to be, I feel like I've stretched out a little bit and ready to just be optimistic about TCU, whether that's warranted or not.
Here to talk about the Michigan Wolverines, I assume. Parker, let's get into it. I am very nervous, if I'm being honest. But we have talked about the Michigan Wolverines offense. We talked about their defense. What we're going to do now is kind of run through the schedule, find any outliers, find anything maybe that TCU fans can take heart in, teams that succeeded against Michigan, take knowledge in ways that Michigan succeeded, and just kind of get a better feel for what the Wolverines have done this season. So, Parker, if it's okay with you, do you want to lay out parameters? Is that okay? Do you want to talk about kind of the metrics we'll be using for this? Because I have one and it's yours, but I'm very excited to talk about it. So what are we going to do here?
Grant, all metrics are mine. I think that's the important lesson from the Purple Theory podcast.
I did not say that, and that is egotistic. Go ahead.
In the beginning, Parker invented analytics. That was a Bible joke for those of you listening at home. I think Grant just walked off the screen after that. He's going to cut that. There's no way that's going to stay in.
I got the screw tape letters for Christmas, and I think it directly addresses that. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So we're gonna talk about a couple things. I think one, we just want to do some kind of first principles basics. We've done the offense, we've done the defense. I've gotten told by multiple people that I should watch the games based on those previews, and so I continue to say we'll never watch the games. Go outside. But two, I want to look at the PFF grades, which again are only I think they're only good as kind of a consistent measure of like how you did over the course of the season, because the same person's watching you over the course of the season. So we'll read those off. We'll kind of talk about the pros and cons of how they did against their different opponents. Potentially look at where they struggled and how they struggled. I also want to look at we'll look at total EPA, expected points added, which is just going to say the value you created on offense and the value you created on defense. How did that look relative to the final score? Because that's going to be informative. Did you get lucky? Did you really struggle? Was it this bad? And segueing there, we'll also look at net success rate. I do a chart every week that I should update for bowl season called "Did we really get beat that bad?" And it looks at net success rate. Grant, success rate is just, did I have positive EPA on this play? Did I increase my team's expected points on this play, yes or no, 1 or 0. Doesn't account for explosive plays, right? Just says that was a play that increased my value. And what happens is that's really, really stable and really predictive about the down-to-down business of conducting football and being successful at football. And so when you look at a game, you can compare the final score and you can compare the net success rate. It's a little bit of an improvement on my friend Rob Bowron at the Beta Rank. I'm sure you're following him on Twitter. If you're listening to this, he has some great numbers. He always talks about look at yards per play and turnovers. And if those don't match up, you'll explain the final score. Net success rate, kind of similar. We can say, hey, was it, special teams? Was it turnovers? Was it explosives that really changed the course of the game, which are things we would not expect to be stable over and over again. If those teams played again, we wouldn't expect those teams to perform that same way. Or was it the down-to-down business of football? Did we just run over you? And that would be predictive. We'd expect that to translate to future success.
So let's table set. I'm going to read the caveman score and a little bit of the box score, just some base level stats. And also I have Parker's did we get beat that bad stats. Parker is going to fill in the blanks with all the stuff that I don't understand. And then I have a special guest that is going to weigh in via text for the Purdue game, the Big Ten championship game. But Parker, let's start on with the Colorado State Rams, the first game of Michigan season, a 51-7 ass kicking in Ann Arbor. Colorado did not stand a chance during this game. It was just, like I said, a complete ass kicking. Cade McNamara was a starting quarterback, went 9 of 18 for 136 yards and a touchdown. Blake Corum, who is not playing against against TCU, 13 attempts, 80 yards, 1 touchdown. It was just a total ass kicking. I don't know how much we can learn from this game because Colorado State was very bad, and this was a cupcake game for Michigan. But Parker, what do you have here?
In terms of total EPA, Michigan added 23.4 total expected points. They held Colorado State to negative 3.15 for a net EPA of 26.5. The final margin there was, of course, what is that? 44 points overall.
Don't expect me to do math, man. I don't.
I was told there would be. Yeah, I was told there wouldn't be.
I was told there wouldn't be any math in this thing.
And this one went to garbage time very, very quickly. I don't know. There's a lot to glean there, other than kind of a narrative we'll see over these next 3 games. Michigan can beat up on inferior opponents. We look at this Colorado State game. They went 3 for 10 on third down.
Yeah, they didn't need to convert third downs.
And they didn't need to do anything else. Yeah, they didn't need third downs. They went 234 rushing yards compared to Colorado State's 84 rushing yards total there. So just an absolute beatdown. Fun fact, Alan Bowman was 5 of 6 for 40 yards in this game. That's Texas Tech transfer.
Kansas won.
What happened? Oh, I turned away for a second. Did Arkansas go for 2 and miss it?
No, they didn't score. Jalen Daniels just ran for a touchdown. 44-38 final Kansas.
Did they wait? No, Arkansas just scored a touchdown in overtime to make it 45-44.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No, Jalen Daniels scored a touchdown. I think you're behind. Okay, woof.
Okay, sorry.
But Arkansas is about to go for 2, I think.
Okay, that is bad journalism on my fault. I apologize. Anyway, okay, back to what you're saying about Alan Bowman randomly throwing passes for Michigan in this year. Sorry, Parker, I didn't mean to throw a wrench into this. I misread the final score. That's why I'm no longer a journalist, folks.
Yeah, totally fine. Four rushing touchdowns, 1 passing touchdown. I will say, in terms of my model, in terms of efficiency, I don't really reward teams who run over bad teams, right? And so they didn't pass a ton there, which is certainly something interesting.
So here's the deal. I think that's what Michigan did for like the first 10 weeks of their schedule, but we will get into that, and especially because, Parker, the next week against Hawaii, which was a 56-10 ass kicking, you had it ranked as the biggest ass kicking of the week in the did we really get beat that bad metrics. Again, JJ McCarthy threw 12 times. He was 11 to 12, which is great, but they also ran for 285 yards on 33 attempts and only threw the ball 17 times. They just kind of leaned on their strength.
Yes, and that's really what it comes down to with like the kind of not rewarding rushing is like if you're we'll talk about this with the Penn State game, I think in a lot clearer detail as we kind of move through this, but just saying, hey, if you're just really, really good at one thing and the other team's really bad at it and you just absolutely blast them on it in a predictive kind of forward thinking sense, that's really not gonna translate to future success necessarily.
Yeah, and then so let's move on to UConn and the military appreciation game. Fun fact, 59-0. Now, granted, this is a bowl participating UConn team, which we
I'm
at the
pretty
Purple
sure the
Series podcast,
spread on this was like 58.5.
and they covered because it was 59-0. In that game, let me make sure I get this correct. They threw the ball 26 times, although 6 people threw passes, including Andy Maddox, who is not a real person. And they ran the ball 43 times for 210 yards and 6 touchdowns. Again, you're sensing a theme here. This was the second biggest ass kicking of the week behind Georgia beating South Carolina, which was sights that nobody should see. Michigan coasted through their non-conference schedule. TCU did the same and really almost lost to SMU, so can't argue. But Michigan didn't schedule anybody out of conference.
They didn't. And the net EPA in the Connecticut game, we didn't read the PFF grades. We got to do that too. I'll do that for the non-con.
Okay. No, I can read that. That's fine.
But the net EPA was 53.3. So like this was an honest to God, like it was as bad as it seemed overall. Okay. Overall grade against Colorado State, 89.8, against Hawaii, 94.1, against Connecticut, 92.5. Grant, what does that mean? That means that given who they were playing and given what they asked their players to do, and given what a certain person has a standard for, they did all those things relatively well. Interestingly enough, against Colorado State, their pass game only a 51.8 passing grade, and a 48.8 run block. Excuse me, I'm not talking at all. 48.8 pass block grade. So very bad pass block. You can see why they ran so much. Because the offense really struggled against Hawaii. That it looked a little sloppy too. 53.7 pass block grade against Hawaii the next week.
I do think, as much as I respect PFF grades and Lord knows I lean on them, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that Cade McNamara was starting at quarterback and not JJ McCarthy.
I think that's probably fair.
McCarthy probably made the line look a little bit better. Maryland was the first actual test for Michigan. Michigan went 34-27, but it was not necessarily an easy game. They were up for sure. It was 24-19 with 9 minutes and 10 seconds left in the fourth quarter. Michigan pulled away kind of at the end to make it look a little bit better. McCarthy was 18-26, 2 touchdowns, no picks, 220 yards. They ran for a further 270 yards on 40 carries. But this, I guess, was the first time really that Michigan faced an actual opponent, and they didn't blow anybody away. Your ass kicking metric, as I like to call it, had it pretty close.
And in total EPA, net EPA, this was their second closest game of the season. Only a 4.78 net EPA separation there for Michigan against Maryland. Which is weird. You can point out some deficiencies. Again, I like this PFF grade, especially like the whole season overview, because they put these little colors next to number. You can kind of look at a row and be like, what was good, what was bad. The passing, 50.2 grade. Their pass blocking was at an 89.1. Clearly, they don't know what they need out of their quarterback and don't know how to make it happen. Also of note, Maryland, not a great run team. One of Michigan's worst rushing performances, 74.6 grade there as well. So certainly some ideas of a team that can, how a team could potentially attack Michigan and where these hypothetical weaknesses might be.
Yeah, I think make Michigan pass is kind of the kind of the overarching theme here, but we will get to that as well.
And we talked about this with the offense a little bit. It's just like,
we did.
I'm not worried about JJ McCarthy scrambling. I think the over-under today on the BetUS show, someone asked about it. His over-under of rushing yards is 14. It's so similar to the damn Texas game.
Yes.
Because in the way that they're operating, it's like, hey, TCU is just going to be able to pin their ears back and go after him and not worry about, JJ McCarthy getting out of the pocket. They're going to be able to do exactly what Jamoy Hodge and Johnny Hodges did really, really well and kind of get there. And if you can disrupt that passing game, I think you can really, really annoy this Michigan team.
This might be the Dylan Horton game. Parker, let's blow through a couple of games. I love a good Dylan Horton game. Let's blow through these next two real quick before we get to Penn State. Iowa was a 27-14 win for Michigan. Iowa is one of the worst football teams we've ever seen, and I understand that their record does not reflect that. Trust me when I tell you they're one of the worst football games I've ever seen. Michigan somehow allowed 246 yards to Spencer Petras on 21 of 31 complete attempts.
And
that
only 35 rushing yards. They shut down the rush yards, and Spencer Petras was able to just get in their
tear them apart. That should not be allowed.
Michigan had a 50 coverage grade, 50.0 coverage grade in the Iowa game, which is their worst of their season by a solid 12 points.
If Brian Ferentz is tearing you apart, imagine what Garrett Riley can do. This is me being optimistic. I'm just telling you, that's a data point to watch. Against Indiana.
Well, and that was a 13-point game, and it was a 12.9 EPA difference. But you look, and no turnovers, penalties were even. It legitimately was Iowa just shooting themselves in the foot, not able to score. They were down 13-0 at the half. They didn't score until a short field in the second half, just because Iowa, turnover on downs, and then a late garbage touchdown. So that game right there is 100%. Iowa couldn't even function on offense, and they still were able to move the ball. They just couldn't, twist the knife at all or capitalize on scoring opportunities.
Iowa being Iowa is essentially what that was. At Indiana, Michigan won 31-10. McCarthy had a great game, 28-36, 304, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. They still ran the ball more than they threw. They ran 40 times, scored a touchdown. Again, that was Blake Corum, who is not playing, but Donovan Edwards, who we talked about, was, I think, 7 attempts, 20 rushing yards. They allowed 203 yards from Connor Bazelak, the Indiana quarterback. Also stacked his ass 7 times, which is terrifying, to be honest with you. But that was just your typical, hey, we're a good team. This is not a good team. Let's beat them game.
Yeah, I think this is a take care of business situation. 31-10 is a little bit underwhelming, but few possessions, very, very meaty game. The net EPA here was 39.1 because Indiana had negative 21.5 EPA in this game.
Jesus Christ.
And so I think a common theme of games that we're seeing against, we'll call the first, what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, we'll call the first 6 games bad opponents. Even Iowa.
Yes.
I think we'll just call this bad opponents. And what we're seeing is that Michigan did enough to win against bad opponents and capitalize when bad opponents shot themselves in the foot.
I think that's completely fair. I think Michigan was like a dormant team for the first 6 weeks. It's like, hey, let's move through it. Let's get to like our actual first opponent, and then we'll start focusing. Which the first real opponent was Penn State. Number 10 of the country when Michigan played them. Credit to Michigan, they beat the shit out of Penn State. 41-17. You had it ranked as the fourth biggest ass kicking of the.
Yes. And overall, they kicked a field goal. They had a touchdown. They threw an interception for a touchdown, a pick 6, and a field goal. They were only up 16-14 at the half. Grant, Michigan, kind of second half team. 4 plays, 81 yards for a touchdown. 1 play, 61 yards. Blake Corum run for a touchdown. Another field goal, a touchdown, 6 plays on 47 yards. And at the end of the game, they absolutely just pulled away in the second half because they were able to run against this Penn State team. They saw something they liked. Donovan Edwards had a 67-yard run in that game as well. And so those big plays really, a theme of Michigan season, I think, we're going to talk about the Ohio State game, is in the second half, saying, hey, we liked something on film. We can put our athletes in a position to get this big play and separate in the second half. So props to them. I think it's worth saying because TCU has been so good at, halftime adjustments, quote unquote. We'll talk about that in the offseason. But they have been so good in the second half. Michigan as well has been really, really good. This is a 16-14 game that ended up 41-17, and Penn State's only score was on the first drive, the scripted drive out of the half.
Yeah, it was an ass kicking. And then they rolled that into Michigan State the next week, 29-7. Michigan State scored in the first quarter, did not score the rest of the game. Blake Corum had 177 passing yards. JJ McCarthy had 167. Blake Corum 177 rushing yards. JJ McCarthy had 167 passing yards. Again, I am not scared of JJ McCarthy, but I am scared of the Michigan running attack, no matter who is in the backfield. You had this ranked. Let me make sure I get that correctly. As a decent beating, it wasn't anything special. Kind of mid-range.
21.6 net EPA here. Michigan had 17.1 total to negative 4.55 for Michigan State, including Michigan State with an interception towards the end of the game there. So certainly a big differential. Michigan State, not very good though. Again, we're talking about you got to play Penn State. You were beat up, but very, very bad against a very, very bad team in Michigan State. I'm contractually obligated to say I am simultaneously just so proud of Mel Tucker for securing the bag and appalled at Michigan State for paying the man like that, given what he's done. I mean, the man basically took one phone call from LSU and became a generational multimillionaire.
We should all be so lucky.
I'm in the wrong line of work. This is on me.
If Michigan State calls, I will take the bag. I can go ahead and guarantee you that. The next week they played Rutgers. It was 52-17. Parker, can we pause here for a minute to ask you a question?
We can.
The Big Ten was kind of bad outside
As
of
we're
like
looking
Michigan,
at all
Ohio
these
State.
teams, you're like, man, overall, not an excellent slate of teams. It's like Michigan, Ohio State, and then very clearly third of Penn State. And then the West is just a damn disaster. There's just not a lot of not a lot of upside, not a high ceiling in the West for the Big Ten.
I mean, Wisconsin's fine, but they were playing with the interim coach for most of the season. Minnesota, God love PJ Fleck, but let's be honest, not necessarily that great. Illinois, we'll get to them in a minute.
They were hurt. Minnesota was hurt a lot too. And but again, that just made their quality worse. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. I really hate like conference quality arguments, just because I've been on the other side of it as you have for so long for the Big 12, and I think that's kind of like it's not a fair way to evaluate a team because you play who you play on your schedule and you play who is in your conference. With that said, Michigan has not played a ton of quality football teams this year.
This a little bit reminds me of I believe it was 2017. Oklahoma State had scored like 500 points in the first 4 games.
Yep.
And TC went up there and Gundy literally said, I don't know what anyone would do to stop our offense. Speaking of Gundy nonsense. And they just hadn't had to play 4 quarters of football. Michigan hasn't had to play 4 quarters of football except once this season against Illinois. And we'll spend most of our time, I think, most of the rest of our time here on that Illinois game. But Michigan has either piddled around in the first half, found an advantage and exploited it in the second half and then just sat back, or they've gotten up big and not had to do anything serious over the rest of the course of the game. I think that's fair.
I think it's fair. Michigan against Rutgers, for the record, was the 6th biggest ass kicking of the week. 7th biggest. I just wanted to point out Notre Dame over Clemson was the 4th, and I find that very funny because Clemson has annoyed me. We now get to, Parker, the Nebraska game. Nebraska, 34-3. I don't have much to say about this, if we're being honest with you. It was the 3rd biggest ass kicking of the week. But again, if you look at what type of game it was, Michigan threw the ball 20 times and they ran it 49 times. That is Michigan football.
28.2 net EPA total there. So yeah, very, very, very big beat. And again, Grant, you know this, so I'm not telling you this. I'm just saying this out loud for the general edification. When you're up, you can run the ball a lot more. And so Michigan does want to run the ball. I think they're 115th in rush rate over expected without looking at my graphic. Meaning, based on down distance yard line, they're running more than almost anyone. But when you're up, you also run more. And so that influences the number of rushes.
Run clock and remove. Parker, for $5, can you tell me who was Nebraska's passing and rushing leader in that game?
Okay, hold on. I want to say Zeb Noland, but I know that's just a meme. It was Chuba Purdy.
It was Chuba Purdy. 6 of 12 for 56 yards and 5 rushing attempts for $40. I don't have your Venmo, so I'm not going to pay you. That's fine. Just put it on the tab. Yeah, well,
we did have a good run going where when we went to what was it, Fat Grass in Bay City? Is that what it's called?
Oh, yeah.
Across the street.
Yeah, Fat Grass. Yeah.
And I paid for dinner, and then you Venmoed me, and I Venmoed you back $1 more, and we went back and forth for a little bit until we settled that bill. But I don't think we need to replay that.
Yeah. Fat Grass, Matagorda County, where I live. That's the Spanish translation. Fat Grass. There you go. Illinois. 19-17 on senior day, no less, for the Michigan Wolverines. Parker, Michigan is a good team. Illinois, I don't think is actually a good team.
Okay, Illinois has a hate-and-ass defense.
They do.
But they also have Chase Brown. So they have two things that Iowa didn't, for instance. They had Chase Brown, who is just a go-go gadget guy.
Sure.
And they have Tommy DeVito, who doesn't make stupid plays. He doesn't make good plays.
That's true.
But he doesn't make stupid plays. He's not gonna break you in half. This game, again, 7-3 at the half. Michigan wins 19-17. So still a second half kind of not necessarily separation, but they closed out the deal. Illinois had, what was this, first and 10 at the Michigan 35. Up 17-13, didn't get any points out of it. A field goal there would have won the game, although hindsight is 2020. And Michigan just drove. They ran the ball very, very well, but they really in those last two drives relied on JJ McCarthy. There's 27-yard pass, 11-yard pass, 5-yard pass, 9-yard pass, and they kick a field goal. And then in that last kind of game-winning drive, 3-yard pass, 8-yard pass, they got a pass interference, 5-yard pass, and then a field goal there as well. So that to me is kind of when stuff hits the fan, they're going to rely on JJ McCarthy and trust him to get their, save them from the fire. But again, that's a very small sample size. The only time they've had to do that all season, they had a negative net EPA in this game. The only one this season, negative 0.111.
There's two.
I beat that bad. Not net success rate. Net.
Okay,
EPA.
Negative EPA. Yeah. Gotcha.
Sorry.
Gotcha. Yep. No, that's my fault. You're right. They did rely on McCarthy. I will point out he was 18 of 34 for 208. They still ran the ball more than they threw. They ran the ball 40 times for 178 yards. Now, listen, Illinois is a really good defense. I think they're very aggressive. I like what they do with kind of the almost kind of like a bear front, but just very like at the line of scrimmage, hey, we're going to beat the shit out of you type defense. This game is kind of like the fly in Michigan's ointment. And while I know TCU has about 6 of them, this game is the one that kind of gives me pause to be like, Michigan is beatable. That does not mean TCU is going to beat Michigan. It means that Michigan is beatable.
It does. And it means that there's a blueprint, right? TCU won a game where they played a very physical run game, and they absolutely mucked that up and forced a quarterback who might not be the most gifted passer to try and beat them. He couldn't, and they pulled it out. I think TCU has much better offensive weapons than Illinois, although their defense is not as good. But that's definitely the blueprint is, can I muck up the run game with a backup with Donovan Edwards, who we've talked about is into different degrees, might be good, might not be good. Well, let me phrase that. Might be great, might not be great. He's definitely good.
Yeah,
and
he's good.
Can they muck that up and force McCarthy to beat them? I think that's really where this comes down to.
Yeah, it's make JJ McCarthy beat you. And listen, as we transition into the last game in the regular season schedule, JJ McCarthy beat Ohio State. JJ McCarthy was great against Ohio State. I watched all of that game. He was fantastic. Now, his receivers were running wide open, and I think a lot of that is credit to Michigan's offensive staff. But JJ McCarthy had his best game of the year, 12 of 24 for 263 yards. I don't know off the top of my head what that means in yards per completion, but it looks like it's about 20-something yards per completion, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. You look at the PFF grade, 60.7 pass, but again, that doesn't take into account efficiency. And they threw the ball 35 times. They threw the ball 25 times. They ran it 35, but Donovan Edwards had 22 attempts for 220 yards and 2 touchdowns. Everything was working against Ohio State. That was, I think, more than anything, a reckoning. That was a, hey, we are a really good team, and like, we're going to win this game by hook or by crook.
Yes, and again, you have that halftime 20-17, and then Michigan pulls away, absolutely blows up in the second half, flips the game script. And Michigan missed a field goal in the second half. So like it theoretically could have been worse. But they scored and forced 2 punts and scored again, and then never looked back. Those last couple of touchdowns were a 1-play 75-yard run and then another 85-yard run from Donovan Edwards. Those two were very much kind of late game, just missed a tackle and he got open. Remember, we talk about the difference between a 25-yard touchdown run and an 82-yard touchdown run is often that one of them was located 82 yards away from the end zone. Right. One was located 25 yards away from the end zone. So that's not to take away from that, to say like the magnitude of those is definitely different. I think outside of about 5 plays, and if talking about the beat that bad, Michigan averaged like 3 yards a play outside of these 5 explosive plays.
Yeah. Ohio State,
and that's what really put Ohio State in the trenches there on the defense side of the ball.
Ohio State had a higher net success rate per your metrics. But Michigan was just more explosive and took advantage of things, stopped Ohio State when they needed to. A couple of pass interference calls that maybe could have gone a certain way, but that's nothing to there. I don't get too torn up on that. That's how football goes. But so Parker, let's go to the Big Ten championship game against Purdue, which was a 43-22 win for Michigan. Parker, I am going to bring in a special guest, if you don't mind, via text. He gave me permission to read this. Okay. Our mutual friend, Shehan Jayaraja, enemy of the podcast, CBS sports writer,
had a great take. This game? Sorry, tell me anything.
He might. I don't know. I need to talk to him. Southwest is very weird. Who knows? He had a great take that TCU is Purdue but better in every facet, and Purdue gave Michigan a lot of fits.
Okay, I disagree with that entirely, and here's why.
That's fine.
Because Purdue cannot and does not run the ball effectively. Purdue chooses to not run the ball, and they cannot run the ball when they choose to. And so I think that the fundamental shift is like, it is a little bit of that distinction between like air raid, power raid, but it is that TCU has a very physical, very successful run game. It's not like they're better. It's not like they're the same as Purdue, but they have a better run game. It's like their offense is built on a run game that Purdue can't even sniff.
I think it's more that Purdue is designed to be annoying, and TCU is also designed to be annoying in different ways.
Sure. Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Can I read you Shehan's thoughts, because he gave me permission, and it's fun to have a smarter person.
Please, no, keep going. I was just interjecting.
No, that's totally fine. He gave me permission, and I need to attribute this to Shehan.
Yes.
Purdue outgunned Michigan by 70 yards. Aiden O'Connell threw for 366 yards. They had 5 drives of 10 plays or more. They converted 9 third downs. Charlie Jones had 13 catches for 162 yards. The running back had a couple of rumbling carries to keep the chains moving, and they kept J.J. McCarthy inefficient, which I think is really the key. I think TCU can do all that stuff, but even better. Duggan can be productive. QJ can be an unbeatable matchup. Kendre Miller can keep the chains moving, and TCU's corners are good enough to cause McCarthy more issues than Purdue. Ultimately, it'll come down to converting in the red zone, converting on third down, and not turning the ball over. Purdue lost because they were absolutely god-awful in the red zone. TCU's got to be better with Duggan.
Michigan against Purdue had a 92.1 overall game. According to PFF, their worst attribute was their run blocking, 66.2. On defense, they had a 78.7 coverage grade, which is their 7th worst game of the season. And so I think that they are certainly beatable. If we look at this game in terms of like the play-by-play, again, at halftime, 13-14 Michigan. Michigan makes an adjustment. They have a 5-play 70-yard drive, a 2-play 67-yard drive. And then Purdue throws the game-sealing interception where they're down 28-13. Even though they score, again, it's never really that close, and Michigan distance themselves. So I think that the lesson we can learn, I think those are fair thoughts of TCU presents matchup and physicality differences that Purdue certainly cannot. But a lot of teams beat themselves in the second half against Michigan. They do. They let them come out of the half and have a dominant drive. They give up big plays. Maybe that's a fatigue thing. If you want to argue about establishing the run, we can do that this offseason. But I do think that's Michigan's plan is to play hard nose, find the advantage, and exploit it in the second half, which is interesting because I think the TCU's been caught off guard in a couple games and recovered very nicely this season, which gives a really nice, in addition to, because again, I think the narratives about physicality are overblown given what TCU's seen against Kansas State and against Texas, for instance. But I do think the narratives about game state are not overblown, that Michigan has been able to cultivate a favorable game state in the second half, whereas TCU has had to. So Michigan has been close at the half and then pulled away. TCU has legitimately been in holes and had to dig out and separated all season. I'm very interested to see this kind of coaching matchup from that standpoint.
I think that's totally fair. I think you're absolutely right. I think we can expect a low scoring second half, first half, and then second half go like one of 8 different ways. TCU could explode and score against this defense. Michigan could explode against the TCU defense, or we could just be locked into a damn, 10-7 brutal experience. With said, I think this is a great transition, Parker, because we need to talk about best case, worst case. We get to some listener predictions. I'm going to save Texas country lyric feelings before we get to our actual predictions. But first, Parker, do you want to do your best case, worst case, or do you want to get to our listeners' predictions?
Yes, let's do our best case, worst case, read our listeners, and then do our predictions.
I love that. Arkansas 50 triple overtime. Arkansas beat Kansas.
Arkansas won. Yes, I didn't react.
Yes, triple overtime. I know. Yeah. I know you were on.
I will, as we're doing this transition to our best case, worst case, I will say props to Texas Tech and Ole Miss for both wearing their home colors.
I love that. Love it. Yeah. Shout out Hunter Cook, who I'm sure is very focused on Ole Miss right now. Okay, so we're doing our best case, worst case. We're going to listeners, and then we're going to our predictions. So, Parker, let's do worst case first because I'm trying to be optimistic.
We'll end on a good note. I like that.
Yeah, New Year's Eve gives me heebie-jeebies. I always make a lucky pot of jambalaya and spend it by myself. So I'm going to spend this entire game in my own a torture chamber of my own making with my dog. So
one time I got a paper extended in a college class because we came in. It was like the week before Halloween. Mm-hmm. And College Parker was an angsty son of a gun, let me tell you. And still hadn't really shaken off that emo phase, if you will. But somebody in our class asked for an extension on a paper that was due the next Monday because it was the Monday after Halloween was the rationale. Mm-hmm. And my professor said, no, Halloween's the worst holiday. I'm not going to encourage you celebrating it, whatever. And I said, no, New Year's Eve is the worst holiday because you have all these expectations for change, but you stay up and the clock ticks and then it's 12:01 and you're the same damn person you were the day before. And she looked at me and my professor was like, are you okay? I was like, yeah, I'm fine. She said, okay, you guys can turn it in on Wednesday.
Well, there you go. You won. Parker, your worst case prediction for this game.
My worst case prediction. My worst case for this game is that Michigan gets those explosive runs in the first half and gets like a 2-score lead early. Because I don't know that that's surmountable for a TCU offense in this game. I think that the positive game state is super important for TCU, or at least a neutral game state. If they get into a negative game state, Michigan can just lean on you. So if we go into the half down like 17-9. And Michigan can score 3 more times in the second half and just lean on TCU and run away with this and eat the clock. So my worst case is something in the realm of like 24-9, 24 to let's say 24-9.
24-9. I like that. I think if JJ McCarthy throws for 3 touchdowns, like we're ending this podcast, but I think that is a possibility. So give me, I'll be a little, let's say 28-13 Michigan, but I think if Michigan could throw the ball, this game's over from the jump. So I think it would be is seeing like a Cornelius Johnson touchdown, just be like, oh shit, like we're not winning this game.
Yeah.
This is over. I didn't get his name wrong, did I? Cornelius Johnson. Anyway.
Yeah, if TCU lets JJ McCarthy have a career game, I think that's a different version of the worst case, but it still looks really bad. And they can still, again, same situation, big lead at halftime. Michigan goes into shutdown mode. They're running 13, 14 personnel and just absolutely leaning on TCU in the second half.
Yeah. Let's go to your best case. I talk dirty to me, Parker. What are we doing here? How does TCU win this?
TCU's best case looks a lot like the Illinois game. It really looks like a game where TCU limits the pass game, only 208 passing yards on 34 attempts. So that's 6.1 yards per attempt for Michigan. They do lose a fumble, so TCU gets some luck with the turnovers there. They hold Michigan to that, 4-ish yards per attempt range. And I believe the long run there, I'm going to make sure of this before I say this wrong. Their longest run was only 37 yards. So that's three things TCU needs for their best case scenario is no long run touchdowns, a turnover luck, and they really frustrate the passing game. I think that plus TCU hits on a couple home runs and then they get in a positive game state. TCU absolutely has the dogs between Kendre Miller and between Amari DeMarcado to be able to run a lot and run physically, put a couple tight ends there and really try to separate and run some clock out here. I think that their best case scenario is just hit a couple home runs, frustrate the run game, and JJ McCarthy just can't make connections. Yeah. Jamoy Hodge and Johnny Hodges can pen their ears back and just ruin JJ McCarthy's day.
Yeah, I think if TCU is going to beat Michigan, and if they are going to beat Michigan in a sound way, they have to make JJ McCarthy throw the ball. He doesn't scare me. I think if TCU shuts down the running game, Dylan Horton's going to have a field day if TCU is going to win this game. And sure, Hodge and Hodges can join in, but making Michigan throw the ball, making McCarthy make decisions, like you said, he doesn't scramble. So I think this game is going to be on the defensive end, and I think TCU has a good enough running game to kind of make up for anything the Michigan defense might throw at it. So it's going to be ugly. Honestly, I think if TCU wins, it's going to be like 20-10. It's not going to be very pretty. It's not going to be very fun, but it's going to be, edge of your seat type stuff. But 20-10, I think, is the best case scenario here. Parker, let's transition to some listener predictions. Does that work for you?
Okay. Yeah, it's great.
All right. So I haven't pulled up. So
this is all you because Twitter's still not letting me log in on my
and that's fine. And I'm reading this on my computer. So we do not have the visual
on my computer.
I know. We do not have the visual charisma that we normally have, but here we go. I will try to do it. We are doing this starting with, you asked, offensive MVP, defensive MVP, score prediction, and say one nice thing about Phoenix. We'll start with Chris McAdams at Chemical Alerts. Max Duggan has to shine on offense. Bud Clark's going to come up with a big INC. TCU 34-24. His mother wants him to go to a pipe organ-themed pizza joint in Mesa.
There's
a lot of things involved. If they do, then that sounds fun to me.
Yeah, I'm into that.
Yeah.
Delightfully
it's always
weird.
sunny. Delightfully weird. It's always sunny in Fort Worth, friend of the pod at GMFP. 25-24 Frogs. Sunny decides to go for 2 and win it. Brother, I will have a heart attack if that happens. Michael at Woodburg's 28-27 TCU. Max Hodges had a taco in Phoenix that I think about every day. Now, here is what bothers me. He didn't give specifics on the taco.
No, even after we followed up. And then he tweeted at me again later. What the hell? I want to hear about the taco.
It was a fish taco. And I love fish tacos. I want to know more about this taco.
Yeah, we need more. There.
Enemy of the podcast, Mason Shireen, Max and QJ, THT, 3130. Plenty of great resorts to hang out and play chess in. They have absurd chess boards in that city, according to Mason. Challenge me on chess.com, you coward. Evan Watson, my former boss, Kendra Miller, Jamoy Hodge, 37-34. The Phoenix saved Harry from dying to a basilisk, and also Arizona hiking. It's very fun. Never hiked in Arizona, but Chamber of Secrets is
Read
good.
another book, you nerds. I don't care if you're Grant's former boss. Quit making Harry Potter a personality.
Gavin Griffin at he's Gavin Griffin. QJ Trey 31-28. He's won a fair amount of money playing poker in Phoenix, and spring training is great. We will drop our Venmos later. Melissa Treeglosser, I'm not familiar with her, but she's at the Coach Melissa. I don't know. Tay Barber, Josh Newton, Michigan 33, TCU 27. Melissa, I expected better from you.
If we get the Tay Barber game in the playoff, I'm gonna lose my mind.
I've been waiting for it all year. Toad
Because
Frog
what that
140.
means, sorry, I'm
No,
lingering
yeah,
on that 'cause that's
no,
Melissa's.
please.
What
Yeah,
that means is that Michigan like doubles Quentin, and they can't keep track of Tay Barber because
I
that's
know.
all. The Max Duggan does not throw it to Tay Barber unless he is wide ass open, but he only throws it to Tay Barber when he is wide ass open because that's their like get out of jail free card. And if Tay Barber has the game, it means Michigan's defense is on skates, dude.
Yeah, it is. Hey, 10-yard curl, 10-yard curl, 10-yard curl. Tay Barber's open. I'm fine with that, honestly. Toad Frog 140, Darius Davis, Jamoy Hodge, 37-30 Frogs. The Diamondbacks have a cool stadium. Shout out Chase Field. Toad Hefe at D. Duncan Soul. TCU has to get explosive plays, or Michigan's efficiency out of 12-13 personnel will feast. He should just replace me on the podcast at this point. QJ Jamoy 28-27. Phoenix's endless pool opportunities. I don't know if he means swimming or billiards, but either one sounds fun.
I would be willing to bet money that there is a swimming pool with a billiards table in it. A pool and a pool in Phoenix, if you will.
Have I told you about, I haven't told you this. I played the best billiards game of my life the other day in New Braunfels, Texas. I think I closed out the last 5 balls. Bike season at Always Sunny. Yeah, I mean, that's just
notoriously terrible at pool. I admire that. I can't do that.
That's just a fun fact for all the ladies listening. Kendra, Shad Banks, hell yeah, brother. 34-24. Phoenix is where the Game 7 Suns massacre, according to Western Conference semis, and that was nice for me. I hated that game so much. Oh, well, if you're talking about the Mavericks game, that's great. If you're talking about the one where the Spurs bully the Suns into the scorers table, that's a different thing. Let's see. Back-to-back Christmas trivia champ Matt Peterson, Jared Wiley, D. Winters, 30-28 Frogs, but his head says 35-21 Wolverines. It's a far better desert than Lubbock. Buddy, anything is. Doug Anders, friend of the podcast. Garrett Riley calls a great unconventional game. D. Winters in full beast mode. 35-17, Georgia takes notice, and Phoenix is how the desert should be. Clint Foster, Michigan is overlooking TCU, and the Frogs make them pay. 31-28. Max and Jamoy Hodge and Horned Lizards are indigenous to Arizona. Brendan Held. Okay, that's a Michigan fan. That's fine. Hey, we welcome all comers. JJ McCarthy, Mike Sanristil. I'm mispronouncing that, Brendan, but I'm not doing it on purpose. 35-31 Michigan, and he hears the air quality. It's pretty good. So there you go. Ray Cartwright, Miller Time, Newton, 34-33, last second Griffin Kell field goal. Good golf courses around the area. That is true. It is on our list for my family golf trip coming up. Let's see. Frog Lover
If I'm not
Boy.
mistaken, just to shout out that Michigan fan, Sanristo is the cornerback who should match up on Quentin Johnston. So if he's the MVP, it means he had a good day. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know his name. I just can't pronounce it. That's
so that was all that say that was prescient. That was a good pull.
No,
if he has an MVP game for Michigan, TCU's gonna lose. Yep.
Yeah, 100%. Frog Loverboy, Riley Feats QJ has a career game. So if San Ristel, that's your matchup there. Mark Perry dominates and leads both teams in tackles. Brother, I'm there for that. Frogs win 30-27. Sports betting is legal there, which I wouldn't be bankrupt if that was true. And Andy Swank, QJ, THT and Fig and man coverage, 30-28. Oh, I will say, QJ had advantage on plays inside the 30. I love that metric, 4-point plays.
Interesting. I'm into that.
So, yeah. Phoenix is all 4 major sports, plus host a Cactus League for spring training, which is cool. Diminished gluteal syndrome, hell of a name. At Hank has DGS. Washington Winters, TCU 28, Michigan 24. It's not too hot this time of year. I assume that's true. Sam Thomas at Sam 2. Max THT 2000 and nothing. And Phoenix is named after Dumbledore's bird. But the Phoenix is not only Dumbledore's bird. Read another book.
I should have saved it for that. Read another book, you nerd.
Susan Tay Barber, D Winters 2117. Great food and shopping. So, yeah, I mean, I haven't been to Phoenix. I've actually heard it's a really nice town. My grandma used to live there. Okay, Parker. We're going to do predictions. We're going to do score predictions. But first, I want to hear, do you have a Texas country lyric or country music lyric in general prepared for this game? What sums up your feelings?
I got to think about this because you asked me about this earlier and I thought I had it and I don't know. I don't know that I have one right at this moment. Tell me yours. That's You're going to tell me yours. You have one. I'm sure you have one queued up. This is like back to our roots. We haven't done this in a while.
I know.
And I have my game.
I have one, and I think I've used it before. It's from a band you and I both know. It's Lucero. It's Raising Hell. Here I am again. Don't know if I'm right, but I can tell you that I'm having fun. So I'll give it one more shot because this race, it ain't quite run. I hit the ground and run.
I like it. I'm into it.
There you go.
I think it's there. I won't even try and pull something out of my behind here just because I hadn't settled on one. I'm gonna go.
I gave you an hour.
You did, and I squandered it. I just a penny saved is a penny earned, Grant.
Howard.
I have this bit in my stand-up routine that I've written down. It's like bad aphorisms, like when they don't apply. Anyway, carry on.
We're back with the Purple Theory podcast with Mitch Hedberg. Parker,
somebody asked me if I wanted a frozen banana. And I said no, but then I wanted a regular banana later, so I said yes.
An elevator can never break, and it can only become stairs.
I said that to my realtor like 100 times. He probably thinks I'm a huge nerd. We were buying a house. I was like, who's to tell me that how many bedrooms this house has? This bedroom has a garage door. This bedroom has a kitchen sink. He didn't think it was as funny as I did.
Parker, it is time to be sober and do our predictions.
Okay.
Let's be realistic.
I mean, I'm gonna be the downer, so you can choose whether to go first or second.
No, you go first. You go first. Tell me what happens during this game.
Okay. I think that what I have said everywhere so far, and I'm going on another Michigan podcast tomorrow night. I've been on one Michigan podcast. I've been on another podcast. I've been on the Bet US show and everything. I think that Michigan
how much time of this podcast was spent talking about naval battles during World War II?
Never. Yeah, no, it was, maybe tomorrow night. Maybe I'll also bring it up. Mass Michigan stuff. But I will say, I've said that Michigan's going to win this game, but there's going to be a drive in the fourth quarter where Jim Harbaugh looks uncomfortable. I don't think TCU is going to roll over. I think TCU might even score a garbage touchdown. I'm going to go 31-27, Michigan.
That high score, huh? Okay. Screw it, man. 24-20 TCU.
I like it. I want to do that.
Screw it. I don't care. So. I'm going to have a heart attack on my couch while I watch this game. Screw it. I don't care. 24-20. I'll pick us to lose against Georgia the next time around. But screw it. 24-20 TCU. Locking in.
Our second to last preview podcast of the
season, man.
About it.
Yeah.
We will be back on Sunday.
Yes, that's correct.
I think, regardless of what happens, to instant react after we've processed our emotions and seen what happens. But yeah, you're not going out to Phoenix.
I'm not. No. Yeah, and you're
I'm
not
also
either, correct?
Not. Yeah. Given that given what the flights and stuff are doing, man, I'm glad I'm not relying on that. Like, certainly I want to be at the game, but
I don't
know if this friend is a listener of this podcast, and so I won't say his name because I don't want to embarrass him, but he'll know who he is, and I'm sure he'll reach out if he says this. But I didn't go my freshman year when TCU played Boise in the Fiesta Bowl, because one, I was protesting because it's stupid that they put us there against another non-AQ team, whatever. And two, it was Christmas first year, when I just went home and watched the game by myself. It's terrible. But I had a couple friends go, and all of them just completely ruined their lives going out to Phoenix and just went out there and got completely drunk. And I have a friend who went to the Fiesta Bowl, hates that stadium because he was being a little disorderly and he got put in a holding cell underneath the bleachers, like for the game. And so he could like hear the crowd and like this whistles and the announcers and everything, but he was just like stuck in this room, drinking water and told to got a little citation. So be smart this weekend, be with your friends, and don't get put in a little holding cell underneath the stadium so you can't watch the game.
I almost got thrown into a brig on a cruise ship at one point, and I can tell you the key, folks, if you're going to the Fiesta Bowl, is to just look the person in the eye and say, "Hey, I'm going to leave right now," and you won't get thrown into the brig. It works pretty well. Parker.
Yep. Just turn around and walk away.
This has been the Purple Theory Podcast. My name's Grant McGallard. You can find me on Twitter at Grant McGallard. It's spelled like it sounds with all those vowels. He is Parker Fleming. He is at Statsmore on Twitter. He has been working his ass off with Sumer Sports, with the Bet US show, which aired Tuesday and Wednesday on YouTube. You can find it there. We will be back on Sunday, like Parker said, by hook or by crook.
Rain or shine.
Rain or shine. Happy holidays. I hope you all had a very Merry Christmas and a very Happy New Year to you all. Parker, for the second to last time this season, go Frogs.
Go Frogs.